All right, hello guys. Today we have Charlie and Max talking about cybersecurity. Can you guys give me a brief introduction?
Hey, I'm Max,
I'm Charlie.
and we're here to talk about cybersecurity.
What background do you guys have in cybersecurity?
I have a degree in computer science. Oh, this is Max speaking, by the way. I have a degree in computer science, and I've been working as a consultant for corporations for 6 years. I do, multiple projects at once where I help deploy and, software that takes care of their HR data and stuff. And basically, cybersecurity is a really big part of my day-to-day job.
And I am finishing up a degree in cybersecurity at the number one school in the country for
Yeah.
cybersecurity.
But for the people who don't know what cybersecurity is, how would you describe? How would you explain cybersecurity to a new person?
So I would say so. Basically, these days there's a lot of information and things that we depend on that are online. And one of the articles that I read recently, even though it's very old, but I don't know how it ended up kind of in my feed, is actually this isn't really on topic. So instead, what I'm going to say is I think cybersecurity is this. Everyone in the world exists in a cyberspace. Like in many ways, we're kind of cyborgs, right? I mean, I carry my phone around. I use it to take notes. I use it to look things up. It's my memory. It's my processing power. It's my so much of how I engage with the world is fundamentally different than what it meant to be a human 100 years ago. And that's because of the way the technology interfaces with all of our lives. And so cybersecurity is protecting those parts of yourself and the way that you interact that exist in the cyberspace. And so one of the things that I think is most pressing right now as we come up on the new election is election security, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I mean, I would summarize that by saying cybersecurity can just be defined as how we defend our information in a world that is growing more and more so based online.
Yeah.
Where I mean, I do my banking online. I do literally everything online, and I'm using literally in a defining that as figuratively. I do other things that are.
And just in case anyone missed it, Charlie's list of things he does online are banking and everything.
Yes, that about summarizes it. And anyway, so it's basically defending all of our information in a world that is growing to be more and more based online.
Before we hop into the topic of why can't we vote online for elections, can you guys tell me how do people keep their networks safe at home? Because a lot of people I don't know if it's like a trap, if you should buy like Norton security and all that. Like, is that just like a fad, or do those really work? And like, what can people do to like today to protect themselves from like hackers and intruders onto their network?
So that's a great question. And to answer that question, I'm going to provide an answer. So basically, oh yeah, so those cybersecurity things. So the first off for the antivirus software. So what that does is, yeah, it's extremely useful. So in this world, there are extremely talented computer experts who are creative and who are, because a lot of people don't realize, because they think of computer science as kind of this math logic thing, but in many ways it is a creative area, and there are these people who are constantly thinking of new ways to get in, to access your data, to change things that you don't want changed. And these antivirus softwares, they are intended to kind of be a general umbrella. They are not the only line of defense, but they are, I guess, kind of the first line of defense.
I would say, and this is something that I believe came out during the Mueller investigation. There was someone who is important that I don't know their names. Clearly not that.
Was it
important.
Mueller?
No, who was talking about it, and he said you need to presume a dirty network.
Yeah.
So you do not, you don't put in your information really. I mean, anywhere, unless you believe that the information is the onus is on the people you're giving the information to ensure and protect. Like, for example, if you're banking, typically the bank is insuring you. So if they get hacked, it's on them to ensure whatever you lose.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, Charlie. And one of the things I was going to say is, yeah, just like Charlie said, you should not only presume a dirty network, but I personally operate under the assumption that everything I put online will eventually be public. I think, there is kind of this arms race between the people who are trying to implement cybersecurity measures and the hackers out there in the universe. And, they get a little, we get a little, but y'all remember when they got into the iCloud, and all this stuff got pushed that shouldn't have gotten
Oh,
published.
man.
Yeah, and one of the things that really protected people at the time was that those people went after high-profile targets, right? Everyone was vulnerable, but the fact of the matter is, when there's 7.5 billion people, you are to some degree protected by the noise. But I do think there will come a day where, you know, I personally believe everything I put online will someday be public. People will be able to see my private messages that I intended to be private. I think people are going to see every picture I ever sent. I think that it's going to be, you know, and maybe I'm gloom and doom, but the fact that a lot of educated people are a little bit gloom and doom about this, I think speaks to how much more gloom and doom the rest of the world ought to be. I don't believe that there is real cyber privacy because, you know, I mean, eventually is a matter of time. You know what I mean? Who was it that said? So this is something the IRA said to Margaret Thatcher once, and it stuck with me because it was one of the most interesting and disturbing quotes I ever had. It was after a failed assassination attempt. He said, "We only have to get lucky once, but you have to get lucky every single time." And that's the state of our data right now, is every single thing you put on the internet is protected until it isn't. And in order to get into it, they just have to get it once. And you have to protect it every single time. And so in terms of how to make sure that happens, frequent upgrades is a big part of it. So like what I mean is you have, you know, software and hardware upgrades, like all these companies that provide everything you use. I'm talking every item of software you use. I'm talking not just your computer, but every single hardware item in your computer. It's provided by people who are they have teams who are constantly finding issues, constantly trying to plug holes, constantly trying to make them more defensible. And frequent upgrades, both in your hardware that is getting new computers and in your software that is upgrading as soon as you get it, is a great way to make sure that you stay at the leading edge of what is possible in terms of security. Although
you can view it as like an air mattress, like in that you don't know, like you can't predict where the weaknesses are. You can't predict where the holes are going to come up. All you can do is patch up a hole when it does come up. You know, it's cybersecurity in a lot of ways is reactive. You don't. It is that's why ethical hacking is a thing, because they're going and trying to find the holes in a way that does not harm you. You can't control for something that you don't know is there. They build the best defense they can, and then people find weaknesses in it. And then you repair those weaknesses. That's why updates are important, because it's, you know, if I have an air mattress and I'm laying down on it, I would like to update it as quickly as possible once we've determined there's a hole in it by patching up the hole.
Yeah. Lest you wake up and you're sitting on the cold floor, and with that's the worst part of air mattresses.
It is the worst part of air mattresses. I mean, water mattresses too. I've never used one, but
actually, if you want to bring us on for a second time to talk about mattresses, I'm feeling like I have actually.
I might know more about mattresses.
I actually know a lot more about mattresses than I do about cybersecurity.
I was sleeping on one last night.
Yeah,
to be honest.
I literally sleep on a mattress easily 60% of the nights that I sleep.
Yeah. Well. That's a
minimum.
That's a
floor.
You know.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm kind of that is like surprising to me is that we enter so much like personal information into like a website and trust the company with it. But in recent attempts like Equifax, where people put their whole identity really on there and it got hacked, why was it that like when people hack into a system, there's no like alerts, and why are they able to steal so much data so fast, and why aren't people like getting alerted about it and doing anything about it until like a day later?
The companies were not always immediately aware that the hacking happened.
The answer is because whoever set up the alerts and whoever set up the process did not think of everything, because they're human. And that's what you got to remember, is not that the people behind these things are incompetent, but that it is impossible for anybody to completely solve these problems.
They're not all knowing.
Exactly. And in fact, they're not all knowing. And all it takes is for one creative mind somewhere in the world with the skill and the knowledge to think of something that the developer has not thought of yet, and they're in. You know what I mean? And that means...
Crazy.
Yeah, and that can mean that it takes a while for people to notice, you know? And I guarantee you, as someone who works as a, you know, as a corporate consultant, that, you know, that one security flaw that was exposed in Equifax, you know, there were probably a dozen issues that Equifax's internal security team had found and patched prior to that within, you know, the previous few months. You know, like they're working as hard as they can, trying to be creative, trying to hack, trying to figure out where their vulnerabilities are. There are people whose job is just that, and they find them, in my experience, a lot more often than the hackers do. But all that has to happen is they have to miss people. So really, you should only trust any given system as well as you would trust a person, an ordinary person just like you, to make it perfect.
I hate to make blanket statements, but
Do it.
Blankets,
Blankets, mattresses.
blankets are comfortable. We've been talking about mattresses, so I feel like I really want to stay on topic.
Conversation is making me
So I'll make a blanket statement right now. Any system is hackable given the time and focus.
Yeah.
You know, there's no perfect system. All it takes is a hacker just sitting there and continuing to try to hack it. There is a hole in every system, and all they have to do is find it.
For sure. And I don't know if you've ever heard the thing with the monkeys and the typewriters, you know? If you have an infinite number of monkeys sitting at an infinite number of typewriters, just slamming at it randomly, eventually one of them will type out, you know, the Constitution of the United States. Like, you know, it's inevitable. Huh?
That's crazy. That's
Well,
crazy.
by definition.
Well, by definition, right?
yeah.
Because, you know, given an infinite, you know, time, everything
If there is an infinitely small chance they can do it,
Yeah.
and there are an infinite amount of them doing it, then it'll happen.
Yeah, exactly. Whether or not the likelihood of something eventually happening is a factor of how likely it is to happen a given time versus how many opportunities it has to happen, which means every single, you know, the chances of you getting hacked today, you know, are extremely low. But if you multiply that by the number of days that will exist that you will be alive, it gets a lot higher.
In a fraction sense, it's like if there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that they are able to do it, and then you multiply it times infinity, then it's an infinite chance that it's going to happen.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, on to the question: why can't we vote online for elections? I mean, we do all of our most like sensitive info online, like filing taxes to the government online. We do our banking online. We trust the internet with so much of our money, our wealth. Why can't we just simply vote online?
Well, so here's kind of my main reason. And one of the reasons Charlie and I were so interested in this topic is because although we're both cybersecurity experts, we have really different political philosophies. So I'm not sure what he's going to say about this part, although I hope he'll agree because everything I say is correct. The fact of the matter is, the internet always carries risk. You know, all this technology is a risk versus convenience question, you know? And when it comes to our government, when it comes to the sacredness of our democracy, I think, you know, we go above and beyond, or we ought to go above and beyond to make sure that it is, you know, taken care of, because it is really, really easy. Because of the way that Americans kind of work, right? You don't really need to be that good of a hacker. You don't need to be that, like, targeted to throw our whole system off whack. And here's what I mean is right now, Texas, for the first time, that's where me and Charlie live, is a little bit politically contested. I can guarantee you that a lot of those Democrat votes are in Austin. You know, Austin is an extremely left-leaning system. And so what that means is what a malicious actor has to do if they want a Republican to win, and I'm using Austin, I'm using Republicans as an example because of the unique constraints around my state, because our Democrats are so centralized. But all they need to do is null out, or for some reason cause a set of votes in an area to be unusable. If they could jam up or corrupt the votes in Austin all by itself, they could guarantee a Republican win. And the reason for that is because, yeah, what I'm saying here is, you know, could a hacker, if given enough opportunity, maybe they could flip, you know, your vote from one thing to another thing. But what would be a lot easier is if they found some way to disrupt or corrupt the area without having to know anything specifically about you, just recognizing that there are areas where there is more or less Republican or Democratic votes and causing those votes to have to be thrown out or otherwise be unreliable. Does that make sense?
In a way, yes. It sounds like sounds to me. I don't know if I'm interpreting this right, but it would sound like the hackers would probably have to essentially knock out the area's internet.
Well, what he meant is that if you could draw inconsistencies in the voting, then they would have to throw out the votes because you could not prove what the votes originally were.
Exactly. I'm not saying that I'm not saying it'd be so hard because they'd have to knock out the whole system. What I'm saying is all they have to do is cast enough doubt on the system that they can't count the votes and have to throw them out. And that would affect the national tally. They don't have to change the votes at all. They just have to corrupt them in a way that can't be detected or verified. And that's a lot easier. It is hard to get in and do very specific things because when developers program, we run a lot of unit tests. We have people who say, well, what if they want to do this very specific thing or that very specific thing? And in general, we start with general use case and we get more and more specific. And so if I was a hacker trying to alter our vote, my focus would be trying to make it so that no one knows what the original votes were. Not specific vote changes, not switching Republican to Democrat or Democrat to Republican, but making it so that a portion of votes in an area that I knew leaned against me could not be used.
And what I would say is, to me, it seems completely impractical in that it would maximize vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
There would be multiple different areas where hackers, could attack. And then not only that, I mean, people could use VPNs to change the location at which they were voting from. And not only that, if they were to be able to show that that voting did not work out, it would or was not as trustworthy from certain areas because there was some sort of inconsistency or something that that was not trustworthy. They would have to retroactively go and fix that, which would, I mean, let's say a Republican got elected. And then everyone was like, well, but like, look at all these inconsistencies and all these trust issues. Let's go back and retally things. And then they chose that a Democrat got elected. What would happen is that the extreme polarization, as the Republicans would say, no, you're cheating. And the Democrats would say, no, you cheated originally.
Ooh, that's a really good point.
Yeah, there are just so many levels to that that just wouldn't work.
Yeah, and so one other thing that I think Charlie's pointing out, or at least edging towards, that I think is a really incredibly good point is, if an enemy, like Russia, like China, someone who's not overtly fond of America, wanted to really cause chaos in our electoral system, they don't have to alter or throw out any votes at all. All they really have to do is create a situation that is even more divisive and that gets us fighting even more and gets us more like what would you do if you were totally convinced that your candidate had won the election, that the other candidate had stolen it out from under you? Because we are Americans, and we were all raised in stories that, the democracy is, what we do so that we don't have to have more revolutions against monarchs, right? Like, that would be super effective, is twisting the nipples of American divisiveness. If you'll...
I couldn't have said it better myself.
Who could have?
And I mean, using 2016 as an example, every sane person agrees there was interference in the 2016 election.
Yeah.
And but the narrative that it was exclusively for Trump is just not true. The biggest pages that were run by Russia were left-leaning pages, and it seems that they didn't start to push for Trump until late in the election. And originally, their goal was to create as much of a polarized society as possible.
That makes sense. So create divisiveness and then push for a candidate so that once the candidate wins, the divisiveness multiplies.
I think they pushed for the candidate they thought would be more divisive, not the candidate that they would be.
Yeah, what you got to keep in mind is these people they don't care about United States domestic policy. They don't care what the United States does with gay marriage or our taxes. They care about what weakens us as an external force. Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah. But one other thing, I guess I have a few things here. So the first thing is, Charlie, so this is a thought that occurred to me just now as we were talking, and I'm interested in what Charlie thinks. Charlie, because Democratic voters tend to be more centralized in specific urban settings, and Republican voters tend to be more spread out in more rural settings, do you think that Republican voters might be a little bit less concerned about area-style voting machine hacks?
Do I think that they would be less concerned?
What I'm saying is because their votes aren't consolidated in geographical points so much that if you're going to do a geography-based hack, I think it might target people who are... Because in general, if you look at one of these maps that go around on every meme page, and you'll see the places that voted blue, highlighted in blue, and you'll see it's a relatively small percentage of total square acres in America, right? And the reason for that is because urban voters tend to lean Democrat.
Yeah. So what I would say is, regardless of who is concerned, it's who should be concerned, and that is everyone, obviously. But it is specifically, I would say, people in swing areas, and whether that's a swing city or whatever. If we had New York City vote Republican, people would look into that. You know, it's not. It's not. I don't think.
And to kind of counterbalance what I said, suburbia, suburban areas usually vote Republican, and those do tend to be. I mean,
They tend to be more.
they are further, but they have a center of gravity that is roughly the same as those urban areas. So yeah, in swing states, worry about that.
Because ideally, you would, if you wanted to change the results of election, you would do it in a way that was not that people didn't pick up on, obviously, and doing something that is so targeting a rural area that is hard red, you're going to get caught. Targeting an urban area that is hard blue, you're going to get caught. But targeting an area that is, in the middle, that can influence the electoral votes of the state is, how you would do it. And
totally. And so I just kind of want to, so we've talked a lot about kind of hackers v. the government in terms of, and hackers v. corporations in terms of cybersecurity. I want to talk a minute about the individual. And here's what I'm going to specifically talk about is social media. I am so engaged in social media. I uninstalled Facebook because I felt like it was absorbing too much of my time. But even still, with Twitter and Instagram and Reddit, I'm spending a lot of time on social media.
There's just so much on Facebook that you can't even deal with. There's so much political stuff now. There's so much on Facebook that I can't. That I don't blame you for wanting to uninstall Facebook.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna have to reinstall it at some point because now that COVID is happening, it seems like it's the only way anyone's getting dates is these stupid dating apps, and that's how I made my account. It's with Facebook, but that's separate. Okay. What I'm trying to say is so I'm going to lead what I have to say with a quote. And I don't know who said this, but I remember hearing it and thinking, that is brilliant. If you don't have to pay for a product, you are the product. And it is not like a scandal.
That's not wrong at all.
It is not like a scandal that these social media organizations sell your data or are selling targeted access to people like you. That's not a secret. It's their business model. It is how they make money. It's how they pay their staff. It's how they get healthcare. It is selling your data and selling people specific access to you. And here's what that means. It means every single time you see a political ad or an article that one of your friends posted or a meme, it is because the social media algorithm is determined that you will engage with that in a way that makes them money. And so every single one of those social media platforms is intrinsically an echo chamber that you are building yourself by how you engage. So I was really active on Facebook. That's why I deactivated it. But I had my main account and I had an alt account that I used to see other things. In my alt account, I was in a lot of conservative boards, and in my main account, I'm a left-leaning gentleman, and I would see a lot of liberal boards. And one of the things that really opened my eyes to this is how the content I saw on those different accounts represented Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who I have no particular opinion about. But if you are reading my left-leaning account, where I engage in a left-leaning way, you would believe that she was a young genius, right? Like this incredible politiker who knows exactly what she's doing, right? And if you were on my conservative account, you would believe that she was totally just this blustering idiot how did this woman get elected? And the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. And I don't know exactly where in the middle because, I'm in Texas and I don't do thorough researching of New York representatives because I don't care. Why would I? But my point is that you have to recognize that you are a mind that applies its rational process to the information that is coming in. And a lot of the information entering your brain is tailored for you by people who think they can make money off of what they present to you. And I'm going to stop right here because I've been talking for a long time, and I know, Charlie, I have a lot to say about this.
I have basically nothing to say about it. That's not true. No, yeah, I believe that that is actually one of the biggest problems that's been for America right now is, we are continuously more polarized. It's shocking how polarized everyone's become, and everyone. What's even more shocking to me about that is how emotional everyone is, and how everyone is so completely sure they're right, and it's because as the algorithms work in the search services, when they advertise to you, they base it off of your interests, and so it does become an echo chamber, and it becomes a more and more radical echo chamber because it adapts to your views continuously.
Yeah.
And then you meet someone who disagrees with you, and you're like, what are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. As Max said with AOC, if you are on the right, you're like, what, you think she's a genius? Are you aware of the fact that she's not? And then you'd say the same thing if you're on the left.
Yeah.
And I just I mean, that feels like a horrible thing, and it's a perpetuating thing. It only gets worse.
For sure. And when we're talking about hacking elections, a lot of times we talk about, these voting machines, which is what we spent the first half of this podcast talking about. But if you're going to, like I opened this thing with, in a lot of ways, if I compare what it means to be a human being right now in America with what it meant to be a human being 200 years ago, like, I am to some degree a cyborg, and the way that I perceive the world is heavily informed by the technology feeds that I expose myself to. And when we talk about election hacking, I think that we need to get those voting machines up to date. A lot of them are decades old, the software and the hardware. And just like I said, that's a gap. But more importantly is the way that your information is being hacked or influenced, sometimes by malicious actors who are trying to convince you of something, but a lot of times by people who are just trying to make money by isolating you and insulating you in this ideological box. And I think the only way to get out of that box is I think a level of humility. And I know that we're getting, why am I asking these technical experts about, humility and social blah, blah, blah.
You didn't ask, we just answered.
Yeah, I'm just answering, okay? Whatever. But what I'm saying is, you have to do your personal due diligence by recognizing that all of the information that you do not put effort into seeking out was provided to you. What that means is if I spend all of my time reading peer-reviewed studies in a chronological release-based order, that's something I'm doing myself. But even if I just Google a topic, or if I base my opinion on things I'm seeing on Facebook, or whatever it is, that's not information I found. That's information that has been provided for me. And it is selected specifically for who I am and what I am likely to believe and engage with. And you got to recognize that.
It's crazy to think that once we set our own presence on the internet and we search one way, the internet and technology has a way of just forming us to be thinking and viewing things of one way. And it's hard for a lot of people, I feel like, to play devil's advocate now for any problem or topic, because everything that they believe in and they search in, they're gonna be backed up with more information that's helping their case, which is kind of crazy because I see a lot of people on Facebook now, they post a lot of conspiracy theory. Based on what you guys are saying, it sounds like once you get into a hole of conspiracy theories, the algorithm is going to catch that and it's going to keep showing you results of these conspiracy theories. Is
For
that
sure.
You have to proactively search for information that can disagree with you. I mean, there are fact checkers, for example, on both the left and the right that disagree as to whether a fact was true or false, which seems, I mean, kind of by definition, how could you disagree if a fact is true or false? And yeah, and obviously, if you're on the left, you're only going to see the leftist fact checkers. If you're on the right, you're only going to see the right-leaning fact checkers. I'm talking too fast.
Yeah,
but
slow down.
Sorry.
But the thing that kind of is bad about that is that people refuse to be wrong. People refuse to think that they're wrong.
Yeah,
And that when they see something that's conflicting with their point, they're always calling it fake, or they're not trusting it because it's coming from either a left wing or right wing source.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons for that is, so I'm gonna say some facts. There's a few things. There's a Dunning-Kruger effect, which means that people who know less about a subject are more likely to believe that they are more likely to believe they are experts than people who are actually experts.
By the way, we are experts on this.
Yeah. Now us, we don't suffer from this. But here's another thing. It's called the backfire effect, which means if someone believes something like a conspiracy theory so strongly, trying to prove them wrong will actually make them more certain of their views. And the reason these two things are relevant is because whenever someone mentions those two things, or the things that we've said about social media, every single listener will say, Yeah, man, I can think of 4 or 5 people who are just like that. But the fact of the matter is, they're thinking the same thing. And the only way for us to fix this is for everyone who hears this to say, but like, is it me? Because you have a human brain too. And it evolved along the same lines that those people you're thinking of evolved, and it is prone to the same missteps. And you need to be very, very cognizant and conscious of where it is you might be making those missteps, because you are prone to them, because they are working with the same hardware you're working with. Bucko, and like, yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
If you're into conspiracy theories or something like that, you don't get exposed as a consequence of the search algorithms. You do not get exposed to people who disagree with you. So you might meet someone in real life, but you have an artificially created community for you, created by the search algorithms online that'll all agree with you. And so you just think this other person is a crazy person because first off, most people aren't disagreeable. If someone says a conspiracy theory, you're just kind of like, okay, whatever, you know. And so you'll rarely run across someone willing to disagree with you. And then online, everyone agrees with you. And not only that, I mean, on Twitter, for example, they show you top tweets first by default. And they determine your top tweets by what they believe you would like to see, which is, again, an algorithm that is going to be what you agree with. Regardless of who you're following, you can be following all your friends, but you're only going to see the tweets from your friends that you agree with. And so to you, you're going to seem like, everyone disagrees with this person. They must be crazy. But the truth is that, I mean, there's a reason that that our elections are close, right? Each half of the country believes 2 different things. It's not I mean, these ideas are widely believed, you know, and even if something is believed by 1% of the population, that's, you know, 3.5 million people. That's a lot of people. You know, Max, do you have anything?
That's a lot of people.
Okay, I mean, and so we agree that 3.5 million is a lot of people.
That's like a very large number of people.
If I had to put it in terms of numbers, I would say it's between 3 and 4 million, probably about halfway there.
Yeah, both large as a raw number and also as a percentage, provided your sample size is what I'm picturing when I say that.
If you're, well, I mean, for studies, they normally do like 1,000 people sample size. So this is 300.
It's like a gazillion times the sample size. Is I think what Charlie's trying to say.
It's kind of crazy to think too that considering how these algorithms work and how they kind of make you believe that you're right in all instances and all beliefs that you believe in, it's crazy that kind of, if you think about it, I kind of feel like big tech kind of runs the election kind of at this point, because if you look at one thing, it's going to sway you to this thing, and the more that you look into it, the more that you think it's gonna validate you, which is crazy to think about. Which, like, has it always been this way, or has it just been like recent in like 2010 to present, where like companies were trying to get these algorithms running? And on that topic, I want to ask you guys about this YouTube issue that a lot of people are facing that are content creators. And I watch Philip DeFranco, and he casts all of the world news and like all the daily topics, and he always mentions how, like, if you mention one real world incident and report on it, YouTube is going to suppress you. Why do you think YouTube suppresses content that promotes real world instances?
Because they've concluded that doing so makes them more money. You got to keep in mind, we always talk about, you know, the political ideologies of these different corporations as though they are ideological. I have worked with a lot of business people at these different companies, and I promise you they are not. I promise you a lot of them hold wildly different viewpoints, but they are all really just there to do their job that they were hired for well. And what that adds up to is YouTube censors those things because YouTube believes that it makes more money by censoring those things than it would by not censoring those things. And this is Charlie has something to say, and he looks really passionate, so I'm handing the mic off.
So, I mean, it is also what they believe. Specifically, it is what they believe will make them the most money, not necessarily that it will. And I think that's again a result of the fact that the most radical voices are the loudest voices. Most people, you know, they want to see everything. Like if we talk about the 95%.
Well, they say they want to see everything.
Okay, well, I mean, if I were to be told that hey, I'm being censored something from this, you know, big boy, what's that book? The Father book. What does it say? 1984. Whatever.
The Father book.
Yes, it's about the father.
I
Max.
guess so.
Okay.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I thought you meant like the Bible. Or
Oh,
something.
Big Brother. Yeah, no,
Oh,
not
Big
the
Brother, not the father.
Yeah, not look. I'm in cybersecurity mode, okay, not political mode. But anyways, yeah. So if I were to hear Big Brother is going to censor you from seeing these things, whatever, for whatever reason, it would make me not want to go to that website. So they're trying to hide the fact that they're
But they don't
censoring.
tell you
While,
that.
yeah, they're trying to hide the fact that they're censoring while censoring, and then while censoring based off of a likely inaccurate perception. Yeah.
Excuse me. Yeah, totally. I did just burp on mic, but I assume it wasn't caught. But anyway,
We all heard it. We all
now
heard
it is.
it.
Whatever.
Yeah, there's no taking
okay.
backs. I don't know.
Oh, here's what I was going to say. Two things. One, if you're on Facebook, it's actually in your settings that you can see how they've pigeonholed you. And I don't remember the exact buttons, but you can Google it, and it will show you what they think your political leanings are, but also
No way.
what political leanings you are likely to engage with.
Well, Facebook.
No way. No way.
Where if you look it up, and so a lot of these big tech companies have been through government audits that require them to store and represent data in certain ways, and you absolutely can. It is available. Look for your settings or a gear button, and somewhere in there it is. Google it. I swear, I personally looked at it myself.
Facebook has become better at this because they've been in hearing in front of hearing to Congress.
Yeah, I feel like Mark Zuckerberg has been in Congress.
Yeah.
Well, I think the
So,
people
like,
keep
16
bringing him up
times
because
the
they
past 10 years.
just.
Well, he's like Facebook and Instagram are owned by the same people. Right?
Totally. Also, I mean, his human suit is almost convincing.
almost.
So I want to see more TV. I want to see more angles.
I want to.
I really. Where's the
He's
zipper?
a lizard. We all know he's a lizard.
We all know he's a lizard.
I've done my googling there, and everything I see reinforces it.
Yeah, and
I haven't seen something.
That's right. And if someone tries to disagree with me, I'll just be even more convinced he's a lizard
I just
because of
Googled
the
something real
backfire
quick.
effect.
Yeah, I just
But
Googled something real quick, and I'm like, nope.
I will say the more information I read, the less certain I become that I know that Zuckerberg is a lizard. But yeah,
That's why I don't read that information.
yeah. Well, you shouldn't because it'll lead you astray.
I assume it's written by lizards.
You
You know what they say?
I'm sure it is.
If you
What
have
do
an
they say?
infinite amount of lizards and an infinite
Eventually,
amount of computers-
if you have an infinite number of lizards and an infinite number of computers, eventually one of them will write a convincing counter-conspiracy to the fact that they're lizards. I think that's what Charlie's trying to say.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Where can our listeners find you guys at? Do you guys have
So-
a podcast, blog, Instagram, any of that jazz?
Yeah, we have a podcast where we answer advice questions called BVice, BVICE. And we are.
Think of a good.
We could think of a good one, so we called it BVice because B is like the first letter in brother, and then vice is like the last part of advice.
And then
So
we make jokes about vices.
yes, because we don't have any,
Yeah. Well,
so it's tough to imagine
yeah.
what it must be like.
But yeah, we give advice. It is good in our opinion, not in really the colloquial definition.
Oh, yeah. We
But
definitely get a lot of negative feedback, but we just remember that the more people disagree with us, the more it means that we're right and they're reptiles.
we push the boundaries of the word advice. I would say,
Oh, yeah.
in a way, it's kind of a linguistic,
Oh, I think so.
philosophical.
I almost
podcast.
think it's more of a poetry podcast because
Yeah.
of the way that we really repurpose the English language to express new and unique and maybe never should have been expressed ideas.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of the story of my life right there.
Yeah, there it is.
So, anyways, follow us there.